Good morning. We're bringing you greetings from Lucama, and we have some friends with us today. And as you will see, they're all full of color. And that is going to tie in with our story for today. For those of you that don't really know me, I am Miss Pam, and behind the camera, we have Miss Keisha. And we're going to bring you a story about balloons over Broadway. And this is based on a real life story about the gentleman that designed all of the balloons that you see featured every year in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. So let's get started. Balloons over Broadway, and this is written by Melissa Sweet. And so I think our friends of color are really going to enjoy this story as well as you. Tony Sarg said every little movement has a meaning of its own. And Tony is the gentleman that created those balloons. From the time he was a little boy, Tony loved to figure out how to make things move. He once said he became a marionette man when he was only 6 years old. His father asked him to feed the chickens at 6:30 in the morning. Every day, Tony had an idea. What if he could feed those chickens without even leaving his bed? He rigged up some pulleys and ran rope from the chicken coop door to his bedroom window. That night, he spread chicken feed outside the chicken coop door, and the next morning, he just pulled that rope and the door opened and the chicken coop was open. They were able to eat their breakfast, and Tony was able to stay in his bed, snug as a rug. After that, his dad was so impressed that he never made Tony do chores again. When he grew up, he moved all the way to London, where he discovered that making marionettes for kids, nobody was doing that anymore. So out of wood, cloth, and strings, he made his first puppet, almost like some of the guys that we see featured here with us today. He figured out how to make them move and be very lifelike, as if they were real actors. Word spread soon about Tony's creations. So in the heart of New York City in Herald Square, which has one of the biggest stores on earth, R.H. Macy's department store, Macy's heard that Tony made puppets and asked him to design a puppet parade for the store's holiday windows. So Tony made new puppets based on the storybook characters, and then he attached some gears and strings and pulleys to make them move. He had Macy's Wondertown. In Macy's Wondertown windows, the mechanical marionettes, they danced across the stage like it was magic. All day long they performed, and the shoppers came by jostling and looking at those puppets. But then Macy's said, "We have a bigger job for you, Tony." They wanted him to make the puppets a holiday tradition out of music and dancing in the streets, just like all of the different immigrants that came to the city shared in their country. Tony was an immigrant too, so he loved the idea of coming up with a parade that had floats, elephants, bears, camels, elephants, and he wanted them all to come from the Central Park Zoo. Well, the animals joined hundreds of Macy's employees on that Thanksgiving Day, 1924, winding their way from Harlem to Herald Square. It was a beautiful, dazzling, colorful parade. In fact, Macy's first parade was such a success that they decided to have one every year on Thanksgiving Day to celebrate America's own holiday. Each year the parade grew, but when Macy's brought in the lions and the tigers, in addition to bears, elephants, and camels, the animals roared and growled and frightened the children. Roar! Tony, can you think of something spectacular? Well, okay. Macy's asked him to try and replace those animals since they were scaring the children. Tony hoped to replace the animals with some kind of puppet, but the marionettes that he had were less than 3 feet tall, so they were a little small. He would have to make them much larger in order for them to be seen in a large parade, and how could he make them strong enough to hold up if there was bad weather? and light enough to be able to move down the street. Well, Tony knew of a company in Ohio that made blimps out of rubber, and that would be the perfect material for inclement or bad weather. When he called the company, they showed him some sketches. They agreed to make what Tony wanted. Still, how could he make the big puppets move? And then he had an idea from a puppet that he received on some rods or big sticks to make them move. On Thanksgiving Day, Tony's creatures, some as high as 16 feet, they spilled onto the street and the crowds cheered wildly. Woo! Part puppet, part balloon, the air-filled rubber bags, they wobbled down avenues propped up on wooden sticks. They're really making it down the streets, guys. All those big colors. But now the sidewalks were so packed with people that only the ones in the front row could actually see the puppets. He realized that his puppets would have to be bigger and higher off the ground. And though the sticks helped to steer the puppets and bring them through, they were kind of stiff and heavy. Tony wanted his balloons to move and gesture more like puppets. And with the marionette, the controls are above and the puppets hang down. So he wanted to reverse that. And what did he do, guys? He said, what if the controls were on the bottom and the puppets could rise up and float from the top? Well, during the next year, he put that idea into motion. He started planning and he asked the company in Ohio to make the balloons out of rubberized silk. It was strong, but it was light. Most important, Tony ordered the balloons to be filled not with just air, but with helium. Since helium is a very light air, it would make the balloons rise. And once the puppets were complete, they were deflated and they shipped them or mailed them back to New York. Tony did not know if everything would go as planned. What if the balloons were filled with too much helium? Would they fly away? What if it hit something sharp? Poop! Well, what if it couldn't fly under the L, which is an elevated train that they have in New York? It was still dark on Thanksgiving morning, and Tony filled all the balloons with that helium. He tied them down with sandbags, and by 1 o'clock, the sidewalks were packed with people, and they were ready for the parade. One by one, he cut the strings. Let's have a parade. Oh my God, look, guys, they're floating. And the magnificent upside down marionettes, they rose up in the sky. Big elephants and everything. They were everywhere. Lions, tigers, bears, oh my. They shimmied, they swayed through New York City. High above the crowds, they flounced in the afternoon. The wind pulling the rope handlers this way and that way. Heave-ho! The crowd screamed for more. It was a parade like New York would never forget. And from that day on, every Thursday morning, crowds had Thanksgiving morning, which may be on Thursday. The crowds lined the sidewalks of New York City to see what new balloons would rise to the sky for Macy's famous parade. Tony Sarg, the puppeteer who loved to figure out how to make things move, had set the stage with a little rigging for a puppet to be anything anyone could imagine it could be. And that is the story of Tony Sarg and balloons over Broadway. So the next time you watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade, think about how he created those. And as a little extra today, we're also going to do a little STEM activity. And I think you guys are going to like it.